Hello, Tina. It's Troy. If you can hear me, I'm going to pass you the ball so we can make sure your presentation comes up, okay? And while we're waiting for Tina to practice, let's do some more mic checks. Heather, do you want to go ahead and unmute and test your mic? Heather Scott, let's test your mic. Go ahead and unmute.
Testing, testing.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Should I turn it off for right now?
Yeah, just go ahead and, are you in the hearing room?
Yes.
Okay. Don't use the mic on your computer then. Just, I didn't realize you were in the hearing room, so that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, just go ahead and mute it for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Looking good, Tina. Just put it into the slideshow presentation. All right, excellent. I'm going to take the ball back and I'll give it to you when they do the disclosures. Okay?
So you pull this forward to
Okay.
turn it on, just so you know.
Heather, this is Troy. Did you want to practice sharing your presentation as well? I have handed you the presentation ball. Okay, that looks very good. Thank you. As soon as they're making their motions on the approval, I'll be moving the ball from Tina to you. Thanks, Heather.
I mean, if that's just the way it goes, then.
Hey, Troy, could you share with Tina one more time so we can test it? She wants to test this one more thing.
Affirmative.
All right, thanks, Troy. Appreciate it.
Curtis Davidson, if you'd like to test your mic, go ahead and unmute and say hello. All right, Mr. Davidson, we are not hearing anything. You may need to go to the top of your screen where it says audio and video and make another selection, and you can test it when you're ready. Hello, Cassie. This is Troy, the host. I'd like to go ahead and test your microphone. Go ahead and say hello.
Hi, Troy. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Video looks good too.
Thank you.
You bet.
Roy, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Did my participants check in with you and sign in?
Who are your participants?
Fred Marenthal, John Bales, and Diane Leavesley.
Diane Leavesley is on. She's having some sound issues. They're working on that. The other two are not on yet. Go ahead and hit the participant window on your screen and you'll get to see who is in the meeting. Bottom right hand corner.
I couldn't quite understand what you said.
On your computer screen, bottom right hand corner where it says participants, click on that. And that shows you who's in the meeting.
So Troy, this is Jeanette. I think Barbara Jackson and needs to be
Oh,
promoted.
yes, I see Barbara Jackson. Okay. Is Ken Murphy also?
Yeah, he's engineer.
Okay. They're promoted. Welcome, Barbara and Ken. Barbara, please unmute yourself and we'll test your microphone. Ken Murphy, go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll test your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Barbara Jackson, can you unmute yourself and say hello? We'll test your microphone. Okay, for those that are having some difficulty, if you look towards the top of your screen, on the top menu bar, there's audio and video. Do click on that and you can change your selection. And when you have done so, go ahead and unmute yourself and identify.
Good afternoon, this is Curtis. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Curtis. Much appreciated. You sound good.
Thank you.
And once again, this is Troy, your host. We are testing microphones and video. When it is your time to speak, it's great if you do turn on your video. It'll show at the bottom and you can see your face. You're welcome to turn it off when you're not speaking, but when you are, we would appreciate it if you have video. Thank you. Okay, we still need to test audio and video for Barbara Jackson and Diane. And Lance, go ahead and unmute yourself. Say hello.
Hello.
Thank you. You sound good, look good too, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Barbara Jackson, can you unmute yourself and try? And I believe the service desk is reaching out to Diane. Hello, Barbara. You are unmuted.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Please turn down your speaker slightly because we are getting some feedback. But we do have sound now, and I do see video. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Call the Board of County Commissioners Land Use and Public Hearing for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 to order. Would you please stand and join us in a pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'm just hearing a pledge. If you ever have an opportunity to Google Red Skeleton's Pledge of Allegiance, I suggest that. It really gives a real meaning to the pledge itself and the words, and it's pretty fascinating. Actually, somebody had told me they met Red Skeleton down at Colorado Springs Airport, and that was pretty neat. What a neat individual. Sorry, I just had to throw that in. Let you know we do have a quorum. Commissioner Layden is excused. Commissioner Thomas is online joining us. Commissioner Thomas, hello.
Hello, Commissioner Partridge. Thank you for that little bit of trivia.
You bet. And I would ask if there's any commissioners have any disclosures for any item on our agenda today.
I have none, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And I have none, and then I'll ask Mr. Ingalls if we have certification of our agenda.
We do, Mr. Chair. Item 2A required published notice, which was accomplished on November 5th, 2020. Item 2B required mailed, posted, and published notice. That was accomplished on October 29th, October 31st, and October 29th, respectively. Finally, item 2C required proper notice on October 27th. That notice was established and it was then continued until today. So with that, you have proper notice and jurisdiction on all three items.
Thank you, sir. Bring us item number 2 of the public hearing agenda items. Our first item, 2A, is a bond authorization, authorizing resolution for up to $32 million in private activity bonds for Apex Meridian South. Presenting for staff, Project Manager Tina Dill.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tina Dill, representing Community Development. The request before you today is to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of $32 million in private activity bonds, or PAB, by the Douglas County Housing Partnership. The purpose is to finance development of 208 multifamily housing units at Apex Meridian South. This hearing is solely to satisfy Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended. On November 12, 2013, the intergovernmental agreement between Douglas County, Castle Rock, Parker, Lone Tree, and Douglas County Housing Partnership was amended. The purpose of the amendment was to grant Douglas County Housing Partnership the authority to issue, manage, and preserve the PAB assigned to Douglas County jurisdictions. Apex Meridian South, LLC, a subsidiary of Shea Properties, requested multifamily PAB for this project. The property is located at 8767 Jamaica Street and is shown here in the northern portion of unincorporated Douglas County. 100% of the units will be for income-eligible residents with income levels at 60% or below the area median income. On September 22nd, 2020, DCHP passed an inducement resolution for $32 million in PAB. Because the property is located in unincorporated Douglas County and the BCC is the highest publicly elected body, it is in your purview to authorize the issuance of the PAB. Approval of this resolution creates no debt or liability for the county, the state of Colorado, or any other political subdivision, and will not give rise to any fiscal liability of DCHP, the county, the state, or any other political subdivision, or charge against their general credit or taxing powers. It is staff's recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners approve the resolution that authorizes Douglas County Housing Partnership to issue up to $32 million in PAB for this project. This request complies with the county approval standards and policies. This concludes my presentation today. Our staff, as well as Diane Leavesley, the Executive Director of DCHP, and I believe the DCHP Bond Counsel, Fred Marienthal and John Bales of Kutek Rock, are all available to answer online any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Tina. Questions for Tina?
I have none. Thank you.
And I have none. Thank you, Tina. So I call on Diane Leavesley if she would like to address the board. Diane, if you're on the phone and unable to join us right now, I'll be happy to go to the Housing Partnership Bond Council for any comments.
This is your host, Diane. If you are in the hearing, go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, okay, it doesn't look like she's on the phone, sir.
Okay, let's go to Bond Council for the Housing Partnership. The two members were mentioned, and Tina, I didn't write down their names and catch their names. If you may call out those two names for me again.
Fred Marienthal and John Bales.
Very well. If either one of you gentlemen are online, would you like to address the board?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, excellent. Good afternoon, it's Fred Marienthal. I'm a partner with QTAC Rock, and we're bond counsel to the Douglas County Housing Partnership, and appreciate your taking on and considering the TEFRA approval for this transaction. It's a requirement of the federal tax code that the public hearing be held, and then the approval of the either legislative body or the highest elected official for where the project is located occurs. You've done this for us on other prior multifamily transactions, and we appreciate you doing it this afternoon for us, or considering it this afternoon for us.
Thank you, Fred. Alex, Commissioner Thomas, any questions for Mr. Marienthal?
I don't. We have approved bonds for the Apex project in the past. It's a great project, and we're lucky to have partners like you and Shay who are willing to build this kind of property for our citizens. So thank you.
No, thank you for your involvement. And in today's environment where there's a need for workforce housing and affordable housing, we appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Looks like Diane may be off the phone. Diane, if you can hear me, would you like to address the board? And I don't see that Diane is responding. I can see her picture. Very well. And I ask if there's any other comment from bond counsel.
No other comment?
Very good. I'm going to move on and ask Commissioner Thomas, do you have any additional questions for the Housing Partnership?
I do not. Thank you, Commissioner Partridge.
And I do not either. I will comment, as Commissioner Thomas did, we have seen two other projects authorized for Apex through the Housing Partnership that have been very successful right in the similar area where this is being proposed. So very comfortable. And Shea Properties, who runs the Apex Meridian project, has been a excellent partner. This is not an easy process to go through. I know we have a lot of interest in private activity bonds, but very few carry through it. And Shea has done that, and I had asked staff, has there been any challenges with Shea? And absolutely none. So they are very, very good at this process.
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you, Tina. At this time, I'll open it up for anyone in the audience, either in the room or online, who would like to address the board regarding this bond authorization resolution, item 2A. Seeing no one in the room come forward, Ms. Dunning, anyone online?
I have no hands raised, Commissioner.
Very well. This time we'll close public comment. I'll bring it back to the commissioners for any further questions, comments, and or motion.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion if you're ready for that.
Yes, please.
A motion to approve bond authorizing resolution for up to $32 million in private activity bonds for Apex Meridian South.
I will second that. We have a motion and a second with no further discussion. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes, and congratulations, and thank you again. Thank you, Tina, for bringing this forward, and thank you to the Housing Partnership. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Great. We look forward to what we suspect will be another successful project. Brings us to item number 2B, this 10587 North Delbert Road, project file US 2020-007. Presenting for staff, Principal Planner Heather Scott. And Heather, I believe this might be the first time you've presented to the board.
Yes, Commissioner, it is.
Well, welcome. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to it. We do as much as we can to make you nervous, make you comfortable. So please feel free to proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Heather Scott, representing for Planning Services. The Jacksons are requesting a use by special review for a caretaker's unit on 10587 North Delbert Road. The project number is US 2020-007. Both Wayne and Barbara are here on behalf of this application. The request is to designate an existing guest home on the property as a caretaker's unit to provide residence for an individual or family to manage the ranching and other uses on the property. This will provide the applicants with the potential to develop a guest home on their property in the future, in addition to the 2 dwelling units that currently exist. The intent of the USR process, as set forth in Section 21 of the zoning resolution, is to provide for uses in specific zone districts that shall require a public notice and hearing and the approval of the Board of County Commissioners, subject to such conditions and safeguards as may be imposed by the board. The use by special review begins with a submittal of an application. Following a review period by referral agencies, public notice is given for public hearings before the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. At the November 16th public hearing, the Planning Commission heard the proposed USR. 2 neighbors provided letters in support prior to the hearing. No members of the public spoke during the public hearing. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the request by a vote of 8-0 with 3 conditions recommended by staff. The site, highlighted in blue, is zoned Agricultural 1 and is located approximately 2,170 feet south of Parker Road along North Delbert Road. Zooming in on the aerial, access occurs from a driveway from North Delbert Road. The existing guest house unit was permitted back in 1967, and this dwelling will be converted to the caretaker's unit per the USR request. A new home was constructed in 2015 as the principal dwelling on the property, and there are 2 outbuildings, including a barn and a shed. The Douglas County Zoning Resolution A1 zoning allows for a principal dwelling unit, a caretaker's dwelling, a guest home on land that's 35 plus acres of land. The site is 20.13 acres of land and follows the LRR zone district, which requires a USR for a caretaker's dwelling unit. This slide focuses on the active portion of the site. No new structures are proposed at this time. Existing facilities will be utilized, including 2 existing residential structures, a barn, a shed, and the pasture area. Staff parking is proposed on the ring driveway west of the caretaker's unit, accessible from the existing internal gravel driveway. In addition to the site plan layout, the USR regulations require that various operational details and limitations be set forth on this plan exhibit. The management plan addresses the items on this slide as described in detail within the staff report. For a use such as proposed, the management plan provisions are limited. Following are site photos. This is a view looking from the entrance to the property from North Delbert Road. In the foreground are all 4 structures, including the primary dwelling unit, the caretaker's unit, the barn, and the shed. This is a view looking into the pasture north of the driveway. This view looks east to property in Elbert County abutting North Delbert Road. This view looks south into pasture abutting the driveway. The approval standards for a USR request are set forth in section 21 and listed on this slide. Staff's assessment of the approval standards is discussed in detail on pages 8 through 10 of the staff report. The applicant was required to demonstrate that there was sufficient water to accommodate 3 dwelling units on this property. Staff has assessed the application in accordance with section 21 of the zoning resolution. Should the board find that the approval standards for the use by special review are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered in the inclusion in this motion. Condition number 1, prior to approval of the record copy of the USR plan exhibit, the applicant shall provide an executed declaration of restricted covenants for water beneath the property. Condition 2, staff has determined that right-of-way dedication is not required at this time, so this condition has been removed. Condition number 3, prior to obtaining a building permit for a 3rd residential structure to be supplied with water from the Upper Dawson Aquifer, the applicant shall provide evidence to the county that an amended augmentation plan has finally been approved by the state and that the existing well permit has been reissued by the Colorado Division of Water Resources. Condition 4, prior to final approval of the record copy of the USR plan exhibit, any necessary technical corrections shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And condition number 5, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public hearing and/or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. Section 2109.09 sets forth the parameters for the board's determination on the use by special review request. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take questions on the staff report if the Board of County Commissioners wishes. Otherwise, Kevin Archer and the Jacksons are available on behalf of the application.
And Commissioners, this is Lance Ingalls. I have forwarded you an email from earlier today from Miss Scott. It has an email in support of this application from a neighbor. It's not particularly long, but you might want to take a minute to read that. We'll label it Exhibit 1 for today's hearing. It has also been provided to Ms. Rendlett.
Thank you, Mr. Ingalls. Heather, I don't imagine that's the first time you presented to commissioners, but you did a wonderful job for your first time here. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I would ask if there's any questions for Heather and maybe even to engineering staff. Commissioner Thomas?
I only have a couple of questions. One of them is to clarify that what email we received from Lance actually has 2 emails attached from 2 different neighbors. Is that what you forwarded to us, Lance?
It is. My apologies. There are 2 attachments. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I have read both of them. They are very short, so I have read those. And Heather, you did a great job for your first time. I have got 4 copies of things that I have questions about, but they are all about the water that may have been cleared up. But I'm okay listening to Mr. Archer first before I ask my questions.
Very well. And Heather, a question for you, and maybe a question to engineering. So for condition number 2 that I believe, and I'm going to reference, I believe it would be engineering, it felt it wasn't necessary at this time. Is just a question, would it be necessary at some point if this application is approved?
Commissioner, it will be required in the future once the roadway actually goes out to be widened when the county comes in and does road work.
Okay, so maybe to have some questions for engineering on that as to why it wouldn't be ahead of time. It seemed prudent. So I don't know if we have engineering on staff, and maybe Heather, you can answer that, but maybe the engineer would be best to answer
Commissioner,
that
I can answer.
Very well, please.
This is Lance Ingalls. I can answer that.
Okay.
The condition of approval to require the property owner to dedicate 60 feet of right-of-way for future expansion is unrelated to the land use. So because the land use is going to really just reclassify existing homes and would create no impact and no need for the road expansion, I informed engineering I did not believe they could require a right-of-way designation for this particular use. So while it was still in question whether the landowner was willing to do it voluntarily, we might need to acquire the property at a later time. We cannot condition approval of this application on that dedication.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Ingalls.
Sure.
Okay, I have no further questions. So at this time, I'll ask if either the applicant, which is Wayne and Barbara Jackson, or if the representative, Mr. Archer, would like to present to the board.
Yeah, this is Kevin Archer, ARCHER, 105 Wilcox, Castle Rock. First of all, I want to thank Heather for jumping in the middle of this project, taking over for Cindy when she retired. Done a great job and helped us get through some of the last few little hurdles. So thank you very much. As Heather mentioned, the purpose of the request, the property owners, Wayne and Barbara Jackson, would eventually like to build a guest house for their daughter. The property currently has a main residence and another small residence where their son resides. As Heather noted, the current zoning is A1, and the size of the property is about 20 acres, which makes it a non-conforming use and actually falls under the LRR zoning regulations. Under the LRR regulations, it allows for primary residence and a guest house, and a caretaker's residence is to be determined by use by special review. So that's why we're in front of you today. The project did go out on referral, pretty minimal response. Building department sent back some handouts for future home construction. Colorado Division of Water Resources noted that the water plan in place was okay for 2 houses, and to go ahead and move forward with a 3rd house, we would have to prepare an augmentation plan and reissue the well permit. So that is in process now. Lytle Water Solutions kind of had the same comments, but the augmentation plan didn't have enough water per county criteria for 3 residences, so that's why it's being redone. Douglas County Engineering just noted that DESC plan will be required with the guest house building permit in the future. And as we just discussed, the right-of-way dedication is no longer applicable to this permit. South Metro Fire Rescue had no objection. Mile High Flood District had no comment since there's no floodplain on the property. Excel Energy noted that there's no apparent conflict. And as Lance mentioned, 2 of the neighboring properties, Ted and Patricia Tedesco to the west, and Roger and Pat Long, neighbors to the north, I believe provided emails in support of the project. Moving on to the approval standards, 210201 complies with the minimum zoning requirements of the zoning district in which the special use is to be located as set forth in this resolution. We believe it meets the criteria, and this process kind of confirms that the project complies. 2102.02 complies with the requirements of Section 21. The project has met all the projects of Section 21. Section 210203 complies with the Douglas County subdivision resolution. There's no subdividing proposed in this particular application. 210204 will be in harmony and compatible with the character of the surrounding area and neighborhood. The use by special review won't change any of the existing conditions, but it would allow for future guest home in the future. 210205 will be consistent with the Douglas County Comprehensive Master Plan as amended. As noted, the proposed use is allowed by use by special review, and no zoning actions are being proposed. The land, and again, the approval of the use by special review won't change the existing conditions, but would allow for the future home. So that would make 3 homes over 20 acres, which is not an over-intensive use. 210207 will provide roadway capacity necessary to maintain adopted roadway level of service for the proposed development, concurrently with the impacts of the development. As noted, BC Engineering is no longer requiring the right-of-way to be dedicated, and also through their review determined that the use was minor enough that no studies or letters or reports regarding traffic were required. 210208 will provide public facilities and services necessary to accommodate the proposed development, concurrently with the impacts of such development. And with this proposal, no additional services are required by the county. 210209 will not cause significant air, water, or noise pollution. The ultimate goal of this project is to build one residential unit, and that'll have no significant pollution. Will be adequately landscape buffered and screened. No landscaping or anything is proposed with this particular proposal, but the future construction of the home will ultimately be landscaped to some extent. 210211 complies with Section 18A Water Supply Overlay District. As noted, the future home will provide an updated augmentation plan and re-permit the existing well as required. Section 210212 will not otherwise be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the present or future inhabitants of the county. And again, with the ultimate use and the addition of 1 new residence, that won't pose any additional threat to the county now or in the future. And I think finally, the applicant is on board with the conditions of approval, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Archer. I'll ask if either Wayne or Barbara Jackson would like to address the board, and if so, if you would state your name, spelling of your last name, and your address for the record, please.
This is Barbara Jackson. I don't have any comments at this time.
Very well. At this time, I'll ask Commissioner Thomas if you have any questions for the applicant or applicant's representative.
Thank you, Commissioner Partridge. I'll address my question to Mr. Archer. So this application looks very straightforward. I just want to be clear on the record. There's 4 copies I printed off here that brought up questions about the water. So apparently there is 1 well on this property right now, and that just to do this step is fine. The Jacksons don't need to do anything with the water. But before they build the 3rd house on the property, they will have to have the water adjudicated or something to that effect. Can you answer that question for me, please, Mr. Archer?
Yes, that's correct. Waters, I believe, has already been adjudicated, but the first time it went through, the adjudication didn't include the 1 acre foot per dwelling unit required by Douglas County. The water attorney counseled him, I believe it was like 2/3 of an acre per unit. So it didn't quite meet the county requirements. So it's being reprocessed at this time.
And your clients understand that. So before they come forward with a building permit request, they'll have that additional step with the water concluded.
That's correct.
Thank you. Partridge, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. And I believe, Commissioner Thomas, your question, thank you for clarifying that. It would be under the third condition of approval that would be required before any type of building permit for a third residence would be allowed.
I believe so. So originally this packet had 5 conditions. Now it has 4 because of the Delbert Road right-of-way that was removed.
Yes, correct. Very good. And I know, Mr. Archer, you mentioned you believe they would be in agreement with the conditions, but I will ask, since I see Ms. Jackson on the line, of the 4 conditions that are stated in the staff report of 1, 2, 4, and 5, are you in agreement with those 4 conditions?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Appreciate it. At this time, I'll bring it to public comment and testimony. Is there anyone in the audience, either in the room or online, would like to address the board regarding this application 2B? Seeing no one in the room come forward. Ms. Dunning, anyone online?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no hands raised.
Very well, thank you. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for any further questions, comments, and/or a motion.
I have a motion if you're ready, Commissioner Partridge.
Yes, I am.
I have a motion to approve a use by special review for a caretaker's residence, 10587 North Delbert Road, with 4 conditions as presented. Project file US 2020-007.
Well, I will second that, and I will comment that I believe this application meets all the criteria in section 21 as we had presented. If there are no further comments or discussion, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes, and congratulations, Mr. Archer and Mr. and Mrs. Jackson. Brings us on to our. You're welcome. Thank you. Brings on to our next item is 2C, Sterling Ranch Plan Development, Second Amendment, Project File ZR 2020-008. Presenting for staff, Chief Planner Dan Avery.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dan Avery, representing Planning Services. The request is a major amendment to the Sterling Ranch Plan Development, project number ZR 2020-008. Mark Kiefer of Sterling Ranch LLC is the project applicant. The request is for a major amendment to the Sterling Ranch PD to modify section D-1.2 to allow kindergarten through 8th grade school sites within Special Character Zone A of the Sterling Ranch PD, which is adjacent to Plum Valley Heights. Special Character Zone A was established as a transition area along the northern and western edges of the existing Plum Valley Heights neighborhood adjacent to Sterling Ranch, and the standards for development within that Special Character Zone were established during development of the PD in conjunction with landowners within Plum Valley Heights. The intent of the PD process is to encourage innovative and creative design and to facilitate a mix of uses in the development of a balanced community, including residential, business, commercial, recreational, open space, and other secondary uses in accordance with Colorado Revised Statute. An amendment to a PD is considered a major amendment, subject to public hearings when, among other criteria, it involves substantial changes to the development standards or commitments or changes in allowable land uses within certain categories. The PD rezoning process begins with submittal of an application. Following a referral period by agencies and the public, notice is given for public hearings before the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. During the referral period, 2 responses were received from individuals associated with the Plum Valley Heights Homeowners Association, and those responses are included in your packet. One response indicated that a school site would consume 75% of the Special Character Zone A along the western boundary. And the other noted that the request would eliminate large lots that the developer had agreed to provide along that boundary. The other also noted that this would be a change to a longstanding commitment to the community. A response was also received from Roxborough First HOA, noting that concerns have been voiced with regard to overcrowding in the Roxborough elementary schools. And as more houses are built, that HOA was happy to see this amendment being put forth. Letters of opposition were also received from 3 residents within Plum Valley Heights expressing concerns about potential impacts from development of a school site where previously large lot residential had been proposed. At its October 19th, 2020 public hearing, the Planning Commission recommended denial of the application by a vote of 5-2. One member of the public spoke on behalf of the Plum Valley Heights HOA, asking questions about why the site was chosen, potential for wildlife interactions, traffic, and pedestrian crossings at Waterton. The applicant responded to those questions and inquired from the Planning Commission about buffering and open space and discussions with adjacent landowners. Citing approval criteria 1520.01, commissioners voting to recommend denial of the application indicated their belief that the proposal was not consistent with the intent of Special Character Zone A to provide a large lot buffer to Plum Valley Heights. Commissioners voting against the motion noted that the school site itself could function as a transitional land use. The Sterling Ranch planned development is generally west of the intersection of Highway 85 and Titan Parkway, outlined in blue. Special Character Zone A is outlined in red on this map and is located in the southeastern portion of the PD along the shared boundary with Plum Valley Heights. Here's a closer view. Plum Valley Heights, lots within Plum Valley Heights are generally 5 acres in size. The PD was originally approved in 2013. The first phases of development in the Sterling Ranch PD were approved by the Board of County Commissioners in 2015, with subsequent plats approved in 2017, 2019, and 2020. The first amendment to the Sterling Ranch PD established a review process for entertainment events within the PD. As I noted in my introduction, the Special Character Zone A was established as a transitional area along Plum Valley Heights. The land underlying Special Character Zone A lies within Planning Area D1, where kindergarten through 8th grade school sites are permitted. However, Section D1.2 B9D of the PD precludes the lead owner from assigning a school site to land within Special Character Zone A. The character zone requires establishment of an open space buffer along the western edge of the PD, along the western edge of Plum Valley Heights, and based on the graphical depiction of the open space buffer in the PD, it's anticipated that that open space buffer would range from approximately 75 feet to 225 feet. In addition to establishing an open space buffer adjacent to Plum Valley Heights, Special Character Zone A also requires that each lot immediately west of and contiguous to that landscape buffer, and each lot immediately north of and contiguous with Plum Valley Heights shall be 2.3 acres or larger. If approved, this PD amendment would allow placement of a school site in the area previously anticipated for 2.3 acre lots. The major amendment would allow, as I've noted, kindergarten through 8th grade school sites in Special Character Zone A. The amendment also provides for a 2-story height limit for such a use. In conjunction with this request, the applicant has committed to a minimum 100-foot wide open space buffer between Plum Valley Heights and any proposed school site. The applicant has further committed that a landscape buffer consisting of clustered deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs to provide year-round screening would be established during construction of a school in that area. As proposed, the open space and landscape buffer would be owned and maintained by the Sterling Ranch Community Authority Board, excuse me. The amendment also provides for the 2-story height limit I mentioned. Here's a view from within the proposed school site, looking east towards the Plum Valley Heights community. And from that same location, looking to the northwest towards development occurring within Sterling Ranch. A view looking to the north. And a view from closer to Plum Valley Heights, looking to the south. The approval standards for major PD amendment are set forth in section 15 and listed on this slide. Staff's assessment of these standards is discussed within the staff report. Should the Board of County Commissioners find that the approval standards for a PD rezoning, a PD amendment are met, the following conditions should be considered for inclusion in your motion. 1, prior to recordation, all technical corrections to the PD document shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And 2, the board's standard condition, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public hearing and or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application, and therefore such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. The PD rezoning process is described in section 150509 of the zoning resolution and provides that the board shall evaluate the zoning request, the staff report, the referral agency comments, the applicant responses, the planning commission recommendation, and public comment and testimony, and shall approve with conditions, continue, table for further study, remand to the planning commission, or deny the request. The board's action shall be based on the evidence presented, compliance with the adopted county standards, regulations, policies, and other guidelines. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take questions you may have of me. Otherwise, Mark Kiefer of Sterling Ranch LLC has a presentation for you.
And Dan, this is Lance. Did you identify the additional document that you sent me today? I have provided that to the board and to the clerk.
I have not. There was one additional item of public correspondence that was received during the Planning Commission hearing that had not been included in your packet. That item of correspondence came from Ann Shefflin, who I believe will speak to you today.
Dan, is that the item that has 3 questions for the school district, 6 questions for Sterling Ranch as it's listed?
That's correct. And those were items that Ms. Shefflin brought up at the Planning Commission hearing and may have further comment on today.
Okay. And the reason I ask, I don't have the Ms. Shefflin's name on the document.
Oh, I apologize. That did come from Ms. Shefflin.
Okay. I just wanted to identify, make sure Commissioner Thomas and I are aware that that is the document you're referring to.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And that'll be Exhibit 1, I gather?
Exhibit 2 for today's hearing.
Exhibit 2. Okay. Got it.
Thank you for clarifying that, Commissioner Partridge.
Very well. Questions for Dan at this time?
I do not. Thank you.
And I do not either. So this time I ask if the applicant and the applicant's representative, Mr. Kiefer, and I believe Mr. Smethels are both present. So I know you know the routine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Thomas. My name is Mark Kiefer, Kieffer. I represent the Sterling Ranch Development Company, LLC, at 8155 Piney River Avenue, Littleton, Colorado, 80125. I believe I can work the slides from here. One thing that if I can ask staff, I probably won't be able to use the laser on this, but if you could mouse over the appropriate areas that I would point to. So, with me this afternoon, again, I have Brock Smethels, the president of the development company, Sterling Ranch Development Company. I also have Pat McGraw, a consultant of ours that has been working with the school district for a number of years and has been a consultant to Sterling Ranch in that manner. We also have Cassie Slade, one of the transportation planners at Fox Tuttle, one of our transportation consultants. And then we also have Curtis Davidson, representing or with the firm PCS Landscape and Design. They are our landscape architects and planners for the site. I'll have each of those individuals introduce themselves at the appropriate time, but and certainly they are available for questions and comments after my presentation. The hearing this afternoon, as Mr. Avery had mentioned, follows a planning commission meeting where we did hear a lot of testimony and concern raised by various planning commissioners at that time about certain commitments that were made back in 2013 when the PD was originally approved. This represents a transition area around Plum Valley Heights, which we also recognize as being a very important area within our development and meeting the vision of Sterling Ranch, wanting to be a good neighbor. But what we would like to at least put forward before the Board of County Commissioners this afternoon is that what we're presenting today isn't taking away anything related to a buffer or a landscape area. As Mr. Avery had noted, that our PD, the Special Character Zone A, refers to 2.3 acre lots that essentially ring that area around the Plum Valley Heights subdivision. What we're proposing is actually a 20 acre site, a larger site, with more room for landscape and separation between the Plum Valley Heights subdivision, and also what we would consider the future development of the site by the school district, a fairly highly amenitized site that would include a lot of internal landscaping, but on top of that, landscaping that we would provide as part of our development. I think that point should be made very clearly here that we're not, I think that the conclusion, I should say, let me back up and not to second guess the opinion of the Planning Commission or our neighbors to the east. But one of the things that did come up is that these were commitments that were made back in 2013 and primarily made to buffer our adjoining neighbors to the east. Again, what we're showing you today through our presentation is that this is an adequate transition zone and certainly can do the same thing that was intended originally in 2013. So in this slide here, you'll see the potential school site that we've identified. Again, not to reiterate too much of Mr. Avery's presentation, but this site is within a portion of that area called Special Character Zone A. A fairly minor area, which you'll see in a subsequent slide, actually encroaches in those 2.3 acre lots that we've identified within our PD. Leading up to this particular request, I think it's also important to understand that the process that we have undertaken at Sterling Ranch to make sure that these particular sites, these particular school sites, are identified ahead of the planning process. We made a commitment to the school district and to our residents, frankly, that we were going to be planning for school sites, again, ahead of our development cycle. So what we have, again, programmed into our development applications, particularly our subdivision applications, is that we would identify a site, create it, at least put it forth before the school district for their consideration at the time that we propose a preliminary plan or a subdivision filing within that preliminary plan area. For about 2 years, we had another site identified, which the commissioners may remember in our preliminary Plan 5 application. There was a site that was located in the vicinity of Waterton Road in a future unnamed north-south road. But, and we had been working diligently with the school district on that particular site. That particular site was ultimately, after 2 years of deliberation and at least study, the school district turned that site down. It then required us to look for another site fairly quickly, and again, as I mentioned before, dovetailed with our subdivision process. So the next logical area that we were looking at would have been our preliminary Plan 6 area, which is a project that you'll be hearing here in the next couple months or so. But this particular site was identified and also presented to the school district, which they have found at least worth study. Since the time that we had asked for a continuance and after our planning commission hearing, we did have contact with the school district, again, to have them at least reinforce or reiterate their position in terms of looking at this site. From what I understand, and through those communications, the school district is still interested in this particular property. That's why we're here this afternoon with the Board of Commissioners. Just again, as a little bit of background here, and I think it's in reference to one of the referral comments from the Roxborough Village First folks, that the Roxborough Elementary School site right now is probably reaching capacity. And that certainly was noted in some initial correspondence from the school district. So if you look at this map here, this is the northwestern Douglas County area that does identify existing sites, both elementary, K through 8, middle school and high school, as well as charter schools. Sterling Ranch, as you can see identified in this particular property, is essentially a hole in the donut right now. And with the advent of all the new projects that we have seen in Sterling Ranch, as well as to the north of us, there is a need for this particular site immediately. One of the things that is, again, we'll cover in a following slide here, we've identified a number of sites within our project for potential schools. This particular site is in an area that the school district has identified a long time ago along the Waterton Road extension, and as an important addition to, or the next K through 8 type of facility in this particular area. So the area that's outlined in that little circle right there is the site that we're talking about again this afternoon. You know, at this time, I'd like to just bring in Pat McGraw, our consultant who had been working with the school district. He has been employed as a consultant by Sterling Ranch for the past 5 years. And his major role right now is to just facilitate our conversations and planning with the Douglas County School District. So I know that Pat's here virtually, so if I can turn the microphone over to Pat McGraw so he can give you a little background on this as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat McGraw, MCGRAW. My address is 990 Pleasant View in Castle Rock. What I'd like to talk about a little bit right now is the process that occurred in order to come to the spot that we're at right now. Initially, my position, I was a teacher in Douglas County for about 25 years at Douglas County High School. I went and I became chief of staff in 2005, and I was the executive director of development and innovation for Douglas County Schools from about 2012 on. The point of that is that the development innovation piece was, I was heavily involved with the schools of choice programs in Douglas County. So I worked a lot with our charters, and At that point, in around 2015, I was approached by Sterling Ranch because what had happened is they had come to us. They had a partnership at that time with Vanderbilt University. And what they were looking at is a lot of the developments that had occurred nationally that had a lot of the technological advances that they had. They had strong partnerships with local facilities, with hospitals, with cities. But one of the glaring deficiencies in what they were doing was they really hadn't talked about advanced planning with the school districts that they were present in that time. So when Sterling Ranch came to us at the district, we'd put together focus groups of teachers and administrators, and we talked with Vanderbilt back then in 2015 and saying, well, what are we going to do to develop this ecological ecosystem in Sterling Ranch? Something that, at that point, and I'll be real honest, in working with the school district, we really didn't tend to have a lot of advanced conversations at that time in terms of what our needs were and how we would best meet the needs of the people that lived in those communities. So that's a little bit of my background, and sorry it's so long with that. So anyways, in about 2015, when I retired from the district, I began work as a consultant. I consult with charter schools, and I also consult with Sterling Ranch. And what we were doing is we were putting together a group. And this group included working with the Sterling Ranch people, the Douglas County, and also we had included at that point in time, Douglas County. All of us were trying to get together and talk about what can we best do to meet the needs of our residents in that area. One of the first things that we talked about was essentially we needed to make certain we met a few criteria in order to best utilize the dedicated land in Sterling Ranch. One of the first pieces was geographical diversity. Essentially, because of the nature of the paths and parks and all the different things that were set up within the county, we wanted to make sure that we would spread the schools out in such a way that essentially on the northern part of their property, we were looking at doing a campus type approach with more of the older kids. And then on the southern part of the property, we were looking at spraying the schools and putting them into the neighborhoods so that we could essentially do as much with walking students as possible. Now, one thing I do want to make note of, during this time that we've been working with the district and with the county, we have had 2 different school boards essentially and 3 different superintendents. As a result of that, there's going to necessarily be shifts in philosophy in terms of what what the needs of the district are at that time. And I want to be very clear. I don't represent the district, but we are working very closely with the district to try to make sure that we meet the needs of the developer and meet the needs of the school district and meet necessarily the qualifications that the county needs for us to deal with in terms of traffic and all the different pieces. So that being said, in about 2017, we first looked at the dedication in number 5. And I want it noted that we did an incredible amount of work with the district, and both the district and the developer went through in terms of determining the fitness of the property in Site 5 to build a school. And we are moving forward with that to a point, and then eventually, it was essentially around a 2-year period that we were looking at Site 5. At the end of that 2-year period, what had occurred is we'd had a new superintendent hired, and we were doing some different things, and the board became involved, and it was determined that the optics of Site 5, because of its location close to a water treatment plant, we felt that the optics of it were such, when I say we, I should say the district felt, that the optics of such that it was no longer a fit site. So this was in the spring of this year. At that point in time, we were looking at, and we're saying, what are other possible locations that we could put these sites and still meet those criteria of being geographically diverse, but also being able to essentially meet the criteria in terms of topography and all the other pieces that are there. Now, one of the things that we looked at, and once again, we've had the district has been out to the preliminary Plan 6 site, and right now it meets the preliminary criteria for that. And we've talked about that as being criteria for a K through 8 facility. Now, that doesn't mean it'll be a K-8 school. And the reason I want to make clear with that, right now, probably the district is finding that K-6s are better accepted within our county, and I think there's a higher acceptance for that type of a school. But just understand, a K-6 facility is very, very different, or a K-8 facility is different than a high school or middle school facility in terms of they don't have lighted fields. There's a lot less traffic around those than either a middle school or high school, and they also require less property. So I guess that's the start. But the things I guess I want to really emphasize are that we felt that it was really important to try to get a long-term look and make a long-term plan for this area. Right now, this was the best solution that we could find within the platting process, the way that it's set up right now. So I guess I'd like to turn it back to Mark. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McGurl.
I also wanted to just make sure that Brock Smithles has an opportunity to just give you a little bit of historical background on this as well, while we're getting these slides reset here. But Brock Smithles will also add some to this.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Brock Smethels, SMETHILLS, with Sterling Ranch Development Company. My address is 8155 Piney River Avenue, Littleton, Colorado, 80125. So I just want to take the opportunity to go through some of the master planning forethought that was put into this and how we got to this conclusion. So initially, there was a school site, a 12.4 acre school site that was platted with filing 1. That site was dedicated to Douglas County along with the recordation of filing 1. And ultimately, as Pat alluded to, the school district just changed their methodology of K-8s. That site in filing 1 was generally more prototypical of a charter K-8, although the district was starting to look into that as a potential alternative for neighborhood schools. Ultimately, the school district elected they wanted a larger site, ideally, and that conversation led to the desire to have 2 neighborhood schools south of Titan Road, with the rest of the schools centered up north of Titan, generally in a campus-like environment. And that master plan was developed along with Pat McGraw's involvement in Vanderbilt University and Douglas County School District. Ultimately, this school site adjacent to Preliminary Plan 5 had been planned on for a long period of time, several years. And ultimately, when we started the platting process of Preliminary Plan 5, the school district began to feel uncomfortable with the fact that the site was adjacent to the Roxborough water treatment plant. Now, we did do an environmental study of that school site along with the school district. It passed the environmental. In addition, we also took the school district, members of the school district, along with Douglas County staff on a tour of the Roxborough water treatment plant. It is one of the cleanest cleanest water treatment plants in the state. It's I believe, the only one that uses ultraviolet light as its primary disinfectant instead of chemicals like chlorine. And ultimately, the site itself is 20 acres the water treatment plant sits on. And the water treatment plant itself is really on the eastern 10 acres adjacent to a water tank site that was constructed with filing 1. Pat alluded to this earlier, but ultimately, after planning on this site for several years, the school district elected they didn't want it because of that proximity, and that still then led to the need of wanting to have 2 school sites south of Titan Road, geographically dispersed throughout the community. We anticipate another school site somewhere in what will most likely be Preliminary Plan 7. But that led us to the conclusion of going to the school site that you see today. Ultimately, what is depicted is effectively 2 2.5 acre lots that would have matched the requirement of Special Character Zone A. And you can see it takes up but a small fraction of both the landscape buffer and the school site that's proposed. And ultimately, it is roughly about 20.5 acres, or almost 10 times as large as the large lot requirement that was originally contained within Special Character Zone A. In addition, one thing that I think is important to note is that while there are large lot neighbors adjacent to Plum Valley in Special Character Zone A, and you can see us continuing that in the other parts of Special Character Zone A, the rest of the subdivisions adjacent to it can be almost traditional single-family detached. And we feel that this school site is actually a larger open space buffer than what would have been allowed under the original Special Character Zone A, preserving the intent of allowing for a fairly large buffer between Sterling Ranch Development and Plum Valley Heights. So with that, I just wanted to go through kind of the methodology of how we got here and why we're here, and I'll let Mark finish up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smethels.
Thank you, Brock. So with that, we've been talking a lot about the school district and about how the school district and Sterling Ranch have partnered to find a site that's suitable to them. But one of the things that I mentioned before is that we also wanted to ensure that whatever we are doing within this area was certainly compatible with our plan development. By putting this particular site, we recognized from the get-go that putting a site in this area within Special Character Zone A would have created this particular conflict that we needed to make sure that everybody understood. We are not taking away anything in terms of landscape buffering, but we are actually enhancing it. As Brock pointed out, that what we're looking at in terms of an encroachment within those 2.3 acre sites is a fairly minor area. But again, we're still saddled with this issue that had been, again, negotiated in 2013 with the neighbors to the east, that this area would be a transition zone, and there was a list of restrictions in that area, mostly on residential development, but there was also a restriction on a school site being placed there. So that's what has led us up to this particular request for the Second Amendment to our PD, is to allow for an elementary school site, a K through 8 or a K through 6, which is a lesser use within that area, within a portion of this Special Character Zone A. Part of that concession that we've made in this process, there's been two issues that have been raised, one being the actual physical buffer, the landscape buffer that is being described in our PD, but also what we'd like to at least present to the board this afternoon. A specific criteria that what we are applying, and again, I don't want to jump into our next application, which is our preliminary plan 6, that is scheduled before the board here shortly. But what we are doing as part of that process is creating a what's called a C1 open space tract within that preliminary plan. That's that area right there that's identified as this crescent-shaped area adjacent to Plum Valley Heights. And again, in terms of this application, what that means is that there is an intentional buffer, a wide identified buffer within that area that would only be reserved for open space. It's a zoning document, or essentially a zoning requirement within our PD, that particular area is reserved in perpetuity for open space. And as part of that, we've described in the PD amendment that in that area there would be additional landscaping, both pine trees and leaf trees that would provide for year-round screening, and also provide a lot of opportunity for berms and other types of measures that would actually preclude any sort of site distance within into the school site itself. Part of that too is, as I mentioned, I think it was brought up in the staff report, that there is a 100-foot easement right now that is a reservation area right there that is already planned for. What we're anticipating is an additional 330 feet in this area and what would be essentially another 120 feet in this area. So that creates a pretty significant separation, at least in terms of the lot line of the school site and our neighbors in Plum Valley Heights. Sorry, this is there. So sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here again. So this particular illustration here shows a conceptual plan that we have given the school district to look at, or at least consider in their planning efforts right now. That shows you where a school site could be sited. And again, I want to emphasize that this is conceptual and it is dependent on what the school district actually would be designing for this particular property. These are recommendations that we're making to the school district, but in the event that they actually take the site, they would be responsible for actually developing a plan, a landscape plan and architecture for this particular area. It also would be subject to a location and extent hearing that the Planning Commission would be considering in the future when a site is actually being proposed. But as you can see, there's an adequate amount of area right there that does allow for additional screening on top of that C1 open space tract that I described earlier. So regardless of this, the actual footprint of the building right here, that footprint could be located, what we believe, anywhere in this area. Parking also could be located any portion of that property, that 20-acre site. But another point that I wanted to make on this slide is that we're giving up a 20-acre site, which gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of siting both parking, their own building, and other types of facilities that they would be using in there. I think Pat McGraw had mentioned earlier too that the programming associated with a K-8 type of facility like this does not include organized sports, does not include lit ball diamonds, tennis courts, or other types of amenities. These are open play areas that the school district would be developing with their school site. One of the other points that was made early in the process when we first started talking about this with the county staff, and I certainly appreciate their input in this process, had been the pedestrian safety aspect of potential crossings on Waterton Road. As you know, as the commission knows, we're working in partnership with the county right now to build Waterton Road and design Waterton Road. We've always believed that Waterton Road is going to be a fairly major roadway running through the middle of our project, but also we wanted to ensure that there are pedestrian safety aspects of this that are also recognized in the development and design of this road. We, with Cassie Slade at Fox Tuttle, we've come up with several recommendations that basically created an environment next to every one of these crossings, potential crossings across Waterton Road, that not only protects future students or people wanting to access the school site, but all of our future residents as well. One of the aspects of this is to show these refuge areas, or these queuing areas, if you will, along Waterton Road, which are part of our development, not part of the Waterton Road construction project. But essentially, those are areas that funnel people across the road so they're not wandering recklessly into the path of a vehicle on Waterton. So that was one of our recommendations and solutions, in addition to several others that I could just touch on very briefly. I'm sorry, this presentation's running a little longer, but we're also looking at other solutions that we've been discussing with your engineering department, including pedestrian refuge areas within the median of Waterton, enhanced crosswalk designs, physical barriers, as I mentioned before, these queuing areas adjacent to Waterton Road. And again, without belaboring these issues, there are probably about 10 or 12 solutions like this that we're currently discussing with engineering. let me just run through these real quick. I think our time is really running out here. But with that, I just wanted to close by saying that, we do recognize that we are certainly changing what would be perceived as a commitment that was made in our PD. First, noting that plan developments do change over time. I would note that Highlands Ranch, for example, has probably 126 amendments through their process since their inception. We're at number 2. I don't know how many we're anticipating in the future, but hopefully not 126. But things do change over time. And one of the things that we do think are worthy of the county's consideration in this PD amendment is that what we are proposing here is a larger transition area than what was originally discussed back in 2013 as a smaller 2.3 acre residential lot, single lot, that would be basically creating this buffer, this transition area next to Plum Valley Heights. So that's the first point that I wanted to make. The other point I wanted to make too is that we have looked at this in terms of a bigger picture too. As Brock and Pat had mentioned, there was a lot of work that had been undertaken in the early days, identifying these various sites and trying to, again, stay ahead of the planning curve in terms of identifying these properties. We do want to make Sterling Ranch a walkable community, an area where our residents and other residents in the county could feel comfortable driving into or walking into a school site, and also ensuring that pedestrian safety is of the utmost importance to us. Part of that process, is also identifying those aspects of Waterston Road and some of the pedestrian design safety issues there. So with that, I just wanted to close by commenting on the approval criteria here. In section 1520.01, whether the amendment is consistent with the development standards, commitments, and overall intent of the plan development, we believe that this amendment is consistent, and it allows for the placement of a school site in a newly developing residential area. In addition, we believe that it is compatible with the vision and intent of our plan development, as well as allowing for a school site, which, again, just for the record, is allowed within any residential areas, with any residential zoning within Douglas County right now. We also believe that those commitments, too, should be looked at in the broader context. It's a buffer that we're talking about. In the original Special Character Zone A, what we are doing is replacing that particular language with what we believe is a larger buffer and more of a benefit to our neighbors than certainly a detraction. 1520.02, whether the amendment is consistent with the intent and efficient development and preservation of the entire plan development. Again, to reiterate, I believe that the overall vision of Sterling Ranch is preserved with this particular amendment. It does tie directly into our planning efforts with the school district and identifying these properties, and it does provide for opportunities for not only our residents but area residents as well. 1520.03, whether the amendment will adversely affect the public interest or enjoyment of the adjacent land, and this particularly speaks to Plum Valley Heights. Again, not to belabor this point, but we believe that this larger landscape buffer actually is a benefit to our neighbors, not a detraction. And that what we're offering here is a much larger tract of land with more opportunities for this type of buffering and create a transition area that's much more definable and palatable to our adjoining rural residential neighbors. 1520.04, whether the sole purpose of this amendment is to confer a special benefit upon an individual. Again, we believe that this is not conferring a special benefit, and in fact provides a benefit to the community and the region as a whole. 1520.05, for applications proposing an increase in intensity, and this relates to section 18A, the water appeal, or our water appeal, Water Supply Overlay District. We don't believe that this changes the intensity of the use to any point that would be a detriment to our existing water budgets that we've already identified within Sterling Ranch. 152006, whether the public facilities and services necessary to accommodate this development would be available concurrently with the impacts of such development. Again, by adding a school that's fairly well needed, as noted by our neighbors in Roxborough, we believe that this is actually helps that situation tremendously. Plus, on top of that, we would think that this school site is phased accordingly in terms of our own infrastructure in developing Waterton Road and supporting water and sewer facilities in the area. And finally, 1520.07, the last criteria here, whether the roadway capacity necessary to maintain the adopted roadway level of service for the proposed development will be available concurrently with the impacts of such development. We again, by employing Fox Tuttle and looking at this thing ahead of time, choosing the site that does have the best access and the ease of access in the area, we believe that this does not affect substantially any sort of level of service identified in Waterton Road. So with that, I just, I'm sorry that we had such a long presentation this afternoon, but we're certainly available for questions. As I mentioned, Brock Smethels, Pat McGraw, Cassie Slade, our transportation engineer, our landscape architect, we're all available for any questions the commission might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiefer. Questions for the applicant this time?
I don't have any now. Thank you.
A question to ask about utilities. In our staff report, you had mentioned that you had looked at locations other than this, and I believe you had made the comment that wasn't that utilities weren't possible, that they were difficult. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Sure. I think Brock could probably answer that question as well, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Brock Smethels again, on behalf of the applicant. One of the things that we looked for, if I go back to that, Dan, if you don't mind going back to that slide of the overall PD. Access to Waterton for the two neighborhood schools south of Titan was important to us in the school district, just because these schools are intended to be shared as regional assets for the valley. And that provides a good transportation corridor. So for the most part, if you look at the areas south of Titan, one of the school sites definitely wanted to be closer to Waterton Road. The other one, we wanted to be closer to Roxborough Park Road, which will be expanded as we develop. And a lot of that was for connectivity, as well as then we're currently developing infrastructure on the east side of this ridge line. Another reason for the siting is Burns Park is our largest regional park in our PD. It runs down the spine of the property, and that was a zoning commitment to Roxborough, so that there wouldn't be homes on the main ridge line for the vast majority of the project. This ridge line continues to the south. Burns Park actually extends south of Waterton, and it crosses at this intersection that we've cited the school at. So all of those considerations were taken into account. That was actually one of the main reasons why the original school site was sited along Burns Park as well. It provides walking connectivity for parents in neighborhood schools, as well as vehicular connectivity for people coming from Roxborough or other parts of the valley. Those are two of the main reasons. And we are tracking utilities as we develop to the south.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Thomas, are you able to hear okay? It seems like it might be cutting in and out.
Yeah, I've been able to hear everybody well, except for Mr. Smethels. Brock fades in and out, and I'm not able to hear everything he's saying.
Okay, I just want to make that noted.
You got it.
Okay, no problem. Sometimes the microphone picks it up, sometimes it doesn't. Commissioner Thomas, did you have anything you would like to ask Mr. Smethels regarding, did you feel you missed anything?
So I do have a couple of questions. So if I heard the testimony correct, the original school site that you had planned was 12.4 acres. Can you tell me how many acres this particular site that we are discussing right now is?
All right, that was different. We've already dedicated a 12.4 acre school site in filing one. So that site is in existence today. It's actually fully developed, fully constructed. It's building permit ready for the school district at the time they request it from Douglas County. The preliminary plan 5 school site was anywhere from 18 to 22 acres, depending on how the road alignment was going to work coming off of Waterton. The school site that's being proposed here is about 20.5 acres. So the 12.4 acres that you heard me say earlier is already in existence, and it's north close to Titan.
But they are both, the one that's already built, the 12.4, is that a K6 or a K8?
That was originally envisioned by the school district as a K8. Again, it was generally seen as a 3-story. It was platted adjacent to Filing 1 when Filing 1 was recorded in 2015. These 2 school sites are also K8s, but as Pat alluded to, the school district in recent years has been reevaluating whether or not to proceed with K8s or more elementary schools.
But what you're looking at now is about 22 acres.
Correct. Correct.
And how many of these special character zone lots of 2.5 acres will be lost if this proposal is accepted?
It generally looks to be about 2. This depiction shows what those 2.5 acre buffer lots could look like. And you can see that we're continuing that down further to the south as we develop south of that school site.
So on this drawing here, Plum Valley Heights is to the far right. It's all white in this picture. And you've got some buffer in green to the left of it. So I see the 2 lots that could be the special character lots of 2.5 acres. Will the third one there that is not encroached upon at all, will that one be used, or is that one not usable?
Yes, that one will be used. We'll use whatever parcels we can. And in preliminary plan 6, we actually have those 2.5 acre parcels are continued around the rest of the special character zone. Obviously, for those larger lots, access to the site becomes difficult, but yes, we will continue to the best of our abilities to continue those 2.5 acre parcels around Plum Valley Heights.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Partridge, thank you for letting me ask some questions. If there's any public comment, I'm interested in that, and I probably will have more questions afterwards. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. A further question, and I don't believe we have a representative for this school that has been identified. Do we have I'm just going to ask, because I may have questions for the applicant here, unless we have a representative for the Douglas County School District available. And I'm looking at staff Dan Avery shaking his head no. Okay, thank you. So about the rejection of the site by the water treatment facility, and this is a water treatment facility, but not a sanitation treatment facility.
That is correct.
So
it's
I understand.
A potable 8 million gallon per day permitted water treatment plant that takes water. It's currently serving both Roxborough and Sterling Ranch. That was done as a joint cost share between Dominion and Roxborough.
Okay. And again, I wish the school district was here. I have a lot of questions for them, but I will raise those questions. But can you explain what their opposition was for this site? Because I hear it was optics. I don't believe I heard it was for any environmental reason. Is that correct?
You're correct. There are 2 schools in Roxborough that are somewhat adjacent to Foothills Water Treatment Plant, which is a 150 million gallon per day Denver water treatment plant. We did the school district performed an environmental on the Filing 5 school site. They did identify a plastic barrel. We went out, had AG Wassenaar remediate the plastic barrel. It turns out it was just a cattle barrel that had gotten lost, apparently. And ultimately, the site was deemed suitable for development. There is topography on the site. I won't won't deny that, but there's topography all over Sterling Ranch. And ultimately, again, you know, one of the things that was important in our, I apologize, siting of a school site was being somewhat close to Waterton as well as Burns Park for that neighborhood school. And you know, it was. Again, it shares a property line with the water treatment plant site. However, the western 10 acres of that site are really not used. The plant itself sits on the eastern site, portion of that site, and is, for the most part, 6 stories underground.
In the original PD, as I understand, there was anticipated to as many as 4, and I quote that as many as 4 elementary school sites. So it is, you know, it's interesting as many as 4, and I'll have some additional comments with that later, but do you recall in the original PD, was it land in lieu, cash in lieu offered? Was that an option?
I believe there's some capability for that. I don't recall off the top of my head. We do currently already pay the school district a voluntary fee of $1,500 per platted single-family detached unit and $750 per single-family attached unit that is paid to the school district. Ultimately, one of the there was a student calculator in the zoning that, as well as then up to a number of sites. I think that there's been evolving conversations with the district over time. As Mr. McGraw alluded to, we've had 3 school district board compositions, 3 superintendents. What they've been looking for has changed based on the compositions of those boards. And so ultimately, the Filing 1 school site is still platted. It's still owned by Douglas County. The school district has identified the need for a second site. This is that second site. And we anticipate at some point a 3rd site south of Titan, and the school district is currently evaluating all of those opportunities.
So with that, and Mr. Ingalls, I may ask for you to help with this. When we've had the applications before, and I'm not sure where in the application process that would be, but as I understand, the applicant has the choice of either a land in lieu or cash in lieu to the schools. Would that be correct?
Generally, the answer is yes, but if the school district prefers a school site and if there's property available, I'm not aware of the county ever deciding or accepting a counter proposal that it would instead be cash in lieu. So often the cash in lieu is in the case of there is insufficient property available at the site to meet the needs of the school district, or there's insufficient need generated by that particular site. So cash in lieu is almost always done when the site is insufficient in and of itself to provide the land that the school district needs.
Thank you. So I have a lot of concerns when it comes to the schools, and Commissioner Thomas is very well aware of this, because through the years we've had numerous school sites and developments, planned developments come forward, and I believe we've identified up to 20 school sites that have not been used, and some of them have been through numerous years. And they actually cause us, it's a lot of challenge for the county, because it is, you mentioned, Mr. Smethels, it falls still under the Douglas County government ownership, if I'm correct in that word, and the county is responsible for it. And we are presently working with the school district in 5 sites that we've asked. Through my full 8 years, we have continued to try to get the schools to dispose of these sites because they say they're not suitable. That's why I wish the school was here, because we have so many of those sites that exist. And they have the option to put those up for sale or utilize them or turn them over to other types of schools. And those, and I'll tell you, they have not been done. So I have a lot of concern when we start looking at school sites. So here's a school site they have very well. It does not appear, there's no environmental reason. There's no apparent odor. And here they turn down the school site. So I just am very uncomfortable with the school district, how they propose on these school sites. I just want to make that known. I know you're bringing this forward, but I think there's some answers from the school district I would like to hear, but we're not going to get that today.
If I may, unfortunately, to your point, Commissioner Partridge, we have two masters to serve the county and making sure there are adequate services for Sterling Ranch as well as the school district, and sometimes we unfortunately get caught in between the two.
Yeah, I know you do, and it's not, and that's why I say, regardless whatever school site is there or could be, if it comes forward this application, they cannot guarantee us they're going to build a school there.
You are correct. I do not believe that they have the resources at this time to build a school here.
Right, and when you look, especially when we've all seen the changes this year through virtual, school doesn't, and I guess go under track record, I would say the chance of this schools, I wouldn't put money on this site or any other site right now for a schools to be developed anytime soon. So, kind of a strong statement, but I can back it up. So I apologize, I had to bring that up, and again, your school district's not here to answer that, so but you're kind of getting the brunt of that, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, and I do believe, Douglas County staff attended several of these meetings and had members of the school district staff attend those as well, so.
Yes.
They may be able to speak to some of these, or at least affirm some of our conversations with them.
So, Mr. Smethels, with that, or Mr. Keeper, whoever you want to answer this. So, with that in the schools, and understanding they're not saying, well, we're looking to start that building process now for a school. Why now? Why bring this forward now?
We are bringing this forward now predominantly so that there are provision of services to serve the community. Filing one, we already have a school site. However, we preliminary plan several years out and then final plat within those preliminary plans for several years. And the school district and I believe Douglas County staff want us to show foresight in trying to select these sites. We have a preliminary plan coming up that is adjacent to this school site, and it will be included with that preliminary plan. We included the preliminary plan 5 school site. It's actually still a part of preliminary plan 5 that was approved by this board. But that's why we're bringing it up now. We're trying to look several years down the road and to what the needs of the community will be.
Very well. Thank you. Mr. Kiefer.
Mark Kiefer. I would like to add to Brock's comments too that, as I mentioned before, this process is intimately tied to our subdivision process in Sterling Ranch. That's the way our zoning is written, our PD is written. So we do, and it was part of our original commitment to the county that we would stay in front of this process by identifying sites. To answer your question, Commissioner Partridge, whether or not this site would be dedicated right away, that's entirely up to the county in our discussions when we get to that particular area in our subdivision process.
Mr. Kiefer, it's actually not up to the county, it's up to the school to request it to be dedicated.
Yes, I stand corrected.
Okay.
You are correct about that.
I just want to make that note.
But again, I think the county does have some standing in that in terms of that negotiations through your subdivision improvements agreements and our land use process that we would be taking through the county.
So far, I'm not doing very good about 20 other sites.
I'm sorry to hear that, actually. I understand that is the case. To the other point, too, that you're making, Commissioner Partridge, we don't know when this particular site is going to be developed. It could remain vacant for some time. But again, what I think Brock has mentioned, and certainly it was brought up initially by Pat McGraw when he was describing the planning process that we undertook many years ago, 5 years ago, with the school district, that regardless, we would at least make sure that these sites are identified in our planning process. Unfortunately, or fortunately, they're only associated with our subdivision process. They're created as a lot within our plat. One of the issues that probably you might have gotten in correspondence from our neighbors in Plum Valley Heights is you have 3,500 acres. Why choose this site? I think that's probably a reasonable question to answer. But it really is dependent on how those particular sites were identified in this early planning process. In this particular area, from my perspective, they just wanted to have a site identified initially, and that we would start planning around that. We would start creating both infrastructure support, making sure that what we're developing around there would not preclude that opportunity. How it's ultimately conveyed, I think that is subject to some negotiations too.
So Brock Stumbles again, it helps to have a team. Sometimes they can point things out to you. So in the zoning, there is a cash in lieu option. It is subject to the approval of the school district. Our PD also stipulates that all of the capital, the $1,500 per single family dwelling unit that is paid to the school district be used for school district capital property, or to be used solely for the school district capital improvements within the property. And as recently as, I believe, Monday, we wired school district fees to the school district for the recordation of the filing 3B plat in the amount of $291,000, and that's just a single plat that we've done. So we have wired quite a bit of funds into the district, as well as we do have that cash in lieu opportunity, but it requires the school district to be on board. The school district, to the best of my knowledge, has requested the school site instead.
Okay. And just to make that note, first of all, you guys, Sterling has been very generous to the schools. I always point that out. There's development does pay a lot for schools, but we're talking about two different issues. One is the school fee, and the other is either this, and I don't have the term right, but it's a capital. It's capital. It's either the land in lieu or cash in lieu.
Cash in lieu, yep.
Yeah, so it's two different things we're talking about, and what you're referring to, the fee per household, whether it's multifamily or single family, are different than what we're referring to in the school site as we're
correct.
addressing.
It's just those fees were earmarked in our zoning to be used for capital improvements inside of Sterling Ranch. So we did try to endow the school district with some proceeds to be able to support a school here. In addition, I did get a text from Pat that the school district currently has a school site in Sterling Ranch in their 5-year plan. That doesn't mean that they will have the resources to execute that, but it is at least currently in their 5-year plan to have a school site constructed in Sterling Ranch.
Well, it's not because you guys haven't done your part.
Commissioner Partridge, can I make a statement, please?
You bet.
I would just like to say that I appreciate you bringing up the board's frustration with all of these school parcel sites throughout Douglas County. We have worked with the school district because that is cash that is sitting there that is supposed to be benefiting students, is my understanding of why developers like the Smethels set them aside for the school district's benefit. And the school district has told us they have no intention of developing many of those parcels. And because they have been there for over 20 years, they can be sold at market rate. So I certainly support you in your comments and frustrations about these lots all over the county. So I would just like to back you up on that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. And so I'll ask this time, do we have any more questions for the applicant at this time?
Not at this time, I do not.
Okay, hearing none. Okay, so we will, and Mr. Keeper, any further comments right now? Okay, very well. Okay, very good. Before we move on to public comment, open up for public testimony, I'm going to ask we take a break until 4:25. The time now is 4:16. And I may even say, can Commissioner Thomas, 5 minutes long enough?
Yep, I can do it.
All right, why don't we say 4:22, roughly 4:22. I'll just keep us moving. So be around 4:22, 4:25 for a recess. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You want to use this mic, you just talk to the front of it, not the top.
Commissioner Thomas, are you ready?
I am. Thank you.
Very good. Should say. So I missed just by a minute.
This is Troy, your host. We are recording again.
Thank you, Troy. So we reconvene at 4:20, just change to 4:24. So at this time, I will open it up for public comment on this application 2C. If there's anyone in the room or anyone online who would like to address the board regarding this application, please come forward or raise your hand. There's no one in the room, Ms. Dunning. Do we have anyone online?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I do have Ann Shefflin. Ann, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
And
Good afternoon, everybody.
And Ms. Shefflin, I'm sorry if I didn't get your name right. I couldn't quite hear it. Would you mind saying your name, spelling your last name and your address for the record, please?
Sure. It's my name is Ann Shefflin, S-H-E-F as in Frank, L-I-N, and I live at 7812 West Trail North Drive, Littleton, 80125.
Thank you.
I'm the referral agent for Plum Valley Heights. So unfortunately, I'm sorry the school district wasn't there, so that I did have some questions for them. But I would like to start off by saying that both Mr. Kiefer and Mr. Smithills are inaccurate in saying that we were promised 2.3 acre lots against our neighborhood. We were actually promised 3 to 5 acre lots mirroring our properties, which Mr. Avery knows is what was promised. So we've already had a huge concession, in our opinion, especially if you look at the layout of these lots, where they've got cuts very close to our bridle path in these lots. The only person we've ever met with until we asked Mark Kiefer to come to our annual meeting last year was Jack Hoagland. So nobody else with Sterling Ranch that's currently with Sterling Ranch has ever approached us since 2013 until we asked Mark to come. So I guess my biggest question here is I'm looking at the Sterling Ranch plan development that was generated in September 2013. And there were 5 elementary school sites located on that plan. Today is the first time I knew there was one site set aside in filing 1. But I guess my question is, why did Sterling Ranch blow through the other 4 filings where there were school sites originally proposed without ever addressing one of the school sites in one of those filings until they got down to an area where they decided to break a promise to our neighborhood instead and proposed putting a school next to us. In my discussions with Derek Sturtz with Douglas County School District, we had several discussions in May. It's my understanding Douglas County School District only plans on doing 1 elementary school in all of Sterling Ranch. So why we are doing 1 in addition to the one that's been set aside in filing 1, I would like to know. There is a site that is north of Titan Road next to SCZF area that's next to the middle and high school location. That would be, seems to me, that would be a better option because we've also, this doesn't have anything to do with Sterling Ranch, but you've also got Stroh Ranch coming in, and not Stroh, the properties to the north of Titan, between Titan and the state park, those kids are going to need a school to go to also. And I don't understand why that isn't being looked at as the other school site. It's right there off of Titan. Utilities, I don't think utilities anywhere in Sterling Ranch are an issue because it's all, if you can serve all these homes, you can sure serve a school site. The location north of Titan Road also keeps the kids away from the large wildlife that we have around our neighborhood. which I addressed if you look at the comments that I made during the Planning Commission meeting that you were handed by Mr. Avery. We have a herd of 165 elk that pretty much stay around our neighborhood. Spend a lot of time on that proposed site during the winter, along with coyotes, a couple black bears, deer, and we have a mountain lion that's recently decided to stay with us. So this is really not a good place for an elementary school with these kids. And one thing that isn't addressed in that little map that they showed of the conceptual school site was the site that was proposed in PS 2020-026 shows 2 big soccer fields and 4 tennis courts on this site next to the school. One thing to keep in mind is this site slopes upwards from our property edge. So all of that lighting and all of that noise is above any buffer that Sterling Ranch is proposing, whether it's 100 feet wide or 200 feet wide. This is all, it's all going to be coming right across to the neighborhood, including all that parking lot lighting. This is a dark sky neighborhood. We have no street lights. We have no big lights anywhere. And there's no way this proposed layout is at all compatible with our neighborhood. And proposing to put tennis courts and soccer fields on an elementary school site tells me that Sterling Ranch is looking at using what the school doesn't need on this site to fill their recreational requirements in their PD, which is very concerning to us considering what they promised us back in 2013. So I guess it boils down to, we don't understand why the 12.1 acre site that's dedicated in filing 1 already, especially when Derek said they only plan on 1 elementary in this whole development, isn't adequate to take care of the school needs in Sterling Ranch. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Shefflin. Ms. Dunning, anyone else?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no other hands raised.
Very well, and no one else in the room again. So at this time, we'll close public comment. And I've asked the applicant's representatives, there are some questions raised in public comment if you'd like to address those questions, concerns.
Yes, Brock Smethels again on behalf of the applicant. I believe I caught most of what Ms. Shefflin had to say. I believe Mr. Kiefer has reached out to Plum Valley Heights HOA several times. And since the 2013 zoning was approved, Sterling Ranch LLC granted an easement to Roxborough Water and Sanitation District to provide potable water service to Plum Valley. And the cost of doing so just recently has been about $300,000 to relocate that line as we develop. So we've certainly spent a lot of money trying to be a good neighbor with the Plum Valley HOA. I did have one of my colleagues research the existing Sterling Ranch PD, and it does call out 2.3 acre minimum, 2.3 acre lot sizes, excuse me, for a buffer. It did not call out 3 or 5 acres. And then in addition, I had Mr. McGraw, who reached out to Derek Sturtz with Douglas County School District, said that he quoted Ms. Shefflin 3 schools across Sterling Ranch. But again, we are bound by our zoning and the calculations of the number of schools you generate based on the number of units we've platted. We have, and this was in my in one of the slides that I presented on, we do have some schools north of Titan. It will be a while before infrastructure is up there capable of serving a school site north of Titan. The school site in Filing 1 is currently served with utilities. This school site will be served with utilities through the construction preliminary plans 5 and 6 in Waterton Road. So we are trying to find school sites that, through the logical construction, are adjacent to these areas that we're developing. So I believe that covers her comments on Solstice and why there are scattered schools throughout Sterling Ranch. Elk and wildlife, we've preserved the Willow Creek Wildlife Corridor in collaboration with Douglas County staff. And we had a Planning Commission hearing last night in which Ms. Shefflin spoke at as well, where Ron Bean with ERO Resources spoke about the habitat in the area generally going south of our property, using Willow Creek to get to Sharptail Ridge and other open space that is south of our property. While we do have wildlife on Sterling Ranch, there's wildlife throughout the entire Chatfield Valley. They sometimes show up at Roxborough as well. The school site depiction that Ms. Shefflin spoke of that dealt with tennis courts, soccer, PCS group, who's our land planners, put together several different renderings of what a school site would look like. We have no ability to add facilities, or the CAP has no ability to add facilities to get additional recreational facilities on a school site like this. Those were just showing what an elementary school could look like. And not compatible with the neighborhood. We still feel like a 20.5 acre buffer, which, to your point earlier, Commissioner Partridge, may or may never ever be built on, is a fairly large buffer for that community. And that's in addition to the landscape buffer that's directly adjacent to Plum Valley Heights.
Thank you, Mr. Smethels. At this time, I'll bring it back to the board for any further questions. I'm going to say any further questions for right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Partridge. I do have a question for Dan Avery, please. So Dan, in the packet on page 55, now that's 55 of our packet. I'm not sure which page it's cut off on the copy I made, but it's under title number D where it says project description. And it says, however, section D1.2(b) (ix) (d) of the PD precludes the lead owner from assigning a school site to land within the special character zone A. And so after reading that, we are here for an amendment to change that commitment. Is that why we're here?
That's correct, Commissioner. This amendment would in part empower the lead owner to assign a school site in special character zone A.
So I read all of this information. That was the first thing that I printed off and highlighted it as I was going through this packet. And the way this appears to me is that I understand the developer is trying to meet their commitments to get school sites identified and set aside so that they can develop around them. And the developer did identify a parcel that the testimony is there is no health hazard, public health hazard, any reason why it can't be used except the school district doesn't like it. Is that correct?
Commissioner, I did look back at the school district response at the time that school site was under consideration. The school district indicated at that time that, and of course, I apologize, Commissioner, my page changed on me. The school district indicated in their correspondence that they evaluated that school site and found it unsuitable due to a variety of considerations, including its proximity to the adjacent water treatment plant, the presence of overhead electric lines bisecting the site, its general topography, and potential access points to proposed surrounding roadways. So they listed a handful of considerations related to that site design that they ultimately considered unsuitable.
But this site is going to be very close to Waterton, which appears to me could be a concern as well for access points. Is that correct?
As proposed in the layout for filing 6, which will come before you in an upcoming hearing, there will be an intersection with Middle Fork Avenue at Waterton Road that would be able to provide access to this school site. The Douglas County Engineering has evaluated traffic impacts and at this point finds them acceptable. As the developer noted, considerations regarding how pedestrian traffic could cross Waterton would be addressed at a future date.
Thank you. Mr. Ingalls. Are you here?
I am, sorry.
Okay, sorry, now I can see you. I couldn't see you before. So I have real concerns about, it appears to me that there were commitments that were made to a neighborhood, and there's very specific language put in the PD to protect this school from being put in this neighborhood. So does the school district have the ability to just say no to a suitable site? Or is there any requirement on their part that they participate and take a site that works with the development as well?
Well, in my way of thinking, there's actually two different questions there. One is, what is the impact of the commitment that was made initially? And that's answered by the approval criteria. If you believe that the approval criteria cannot be met because of that initial commitment, then you can certainly decline this application. But I don't believe that whether the school district feels a particular site is suitable or not is relevant to that part of the determination of whether the approval criteria are in fact met. I do understand that the board believes, the county commissioners believe that the school site that was offered previously is in fact suitable. The school district would not agree with that. I suspect we would not want to create another situation where we have a site that the school district does not want to use on the books for school district purposes. I don't think that's going to solve another problem. So no one can tell the school district where to build other than the school district and the L&E process that goes through the planning commission. So the county doesn't have the right to tell them this is your site, you have to build here. The developer doesn't have that right. There has to be some collaboration with the school district if the school is ever going to actually be built. So could the school district change their minds on the initial site? I guess that's possible, but they did state some reasons why they don't feel that site was adequate for their needs.
Thank you, Mr. Ingalls. So you talk about criteria, and as we were going through the criteria, I noted 1520.01 and 1520.03. That one, the 03 particularly talks about the neighborhood, if I recall. Dan, is there a possibility you could put up the criteria, please?
Yes, Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you. So 1520.01, whether the amendment is consistent with the development standards the commitments and overall intent of the plan development. So the word commitments there matches the sentence I read earlier. And 1520.03, whether the amendment will adversely affect the public interest or enjoyment of the adjacent land. And while I was reading all this and considering all this, I do know that Sterling Ranch made considerable commitments in the way of providing development of water pipes, water availability for Plum Valley. I am aware of that. Thank you, Brock, for bringing that up. So these are just my initial thoughts going through my mind. And I'm certainly interested in what Commissioner Partridge has to add to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Mr. Smethels, were you wanting to make some comments? I think you were. I want to give you that option.
Thank you. Yeah, I did just want to speak on the condition, or on the school district's comments on the preliminary plan 5 site. There is a overhead distribution electric line that runs through the preliminary plan 5 site that, and Mr. Avery can speak to this as well. Generally speaking, we're required to underground those and relocate them when we develop. And we did make that commitment to the school district. And then in addition, the school site in preliminary plan 5 does need about 150 to 200,000 yards of dirt. We will generate that through our development activities, and we had proposed a regrading plan that would have been positioned to make that site more suitable. So I just wanted to put those two on the record, that we did address those concerns. And then for access, Mr. Avery, I believe himself, participated in several meetings with Mr. Williams and other members of Douglas County staff that we felt we were able to address access issues that would have been suitable to Douglas County.
Thank you, sir.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Smethels broke out a little bit. I had trouble. I just want to clarify that what I heard him say is that Sterling Ranch has offered to bury those overhead lines at their expense to make that site, the original site, more acceptable to the school district.
Correct.
And also additional needs for dirt. And Sterling Ranch committed that they would bring that dirt into the site and get it graded as well. Is that correct, Brock?
Correct. What I was saying is that generally speaking, we're required to underground and relocate distribution lines as we develop. And so that was part of the commitments that we discussed with the school district, that when they found that the need for that school site, we would have done that. And then we need, we actually did this in filing 1. We need areas where we can balance dirt needs across the overall master plan. And this particular school site in preliminary plan 5 was between 100,000 and 200,000 cubic yards of dirt short. We will generate that and regrade that site as part of our development activities just through the ordinary course of business. So those conditions, or those concerns that the school district had, we felt we could have alleviated. However, again, we've been working with the county and the school district to try and find a site that was suitable, and this preliminary plan 6 site was, or this school site that you are looking at was the one that the school district felt was the most suitable for the reasons I mentioned earlier.
And I appreciate that. This paragraph I just read seems to be a commitment to the neighbors, which is in conflict with 1520.01. So that's just my thought process right now.
Understood. I believe the commitment, as we alluded to earlier, in keeping with the original concept, this school site will be a lower dense use than we would be allowed if we were to stick with the existing zoning. And what I mean by that is, you saw those only 2 of the 2.3 acre sites are removed. We can do traditional single family detached residential housing beyond that. This school site will sit on a 20 acre site. It's a fairly large site, and will actually be, for intents and purposes, less dense by some standards than what would have been allowed under our existing zoning.
Thank you. Commissioner Partridge, do you have any insight?
Just a couple additional comments. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas, for your comments there or discussion. And even though as we look at everything, we look at the criteria, and I pay attention to 152007. I don't think that's really in question, but I think it's an interesting for us, because I can't say that wouldn't be met. But I've got some great concern, because we know with school traffic, we don't know what we get until we actually have a school. And I speak that from the county, and I can also pretty confidently report that from the municipalities. We all have challenges with school traffic. I don't think there's anybody that's on this call in this room or in this county that doesn't have to deal with school traffic. When we look at, we've worked to create a great access, a southern connector in there. I'm not real excited about having a large amount of traffic, school traffic, have to cross that road when the majority of the enrolled students would be from north of that road. Again, can't say that criteria wouldn't be met, but there's some concern there. So there's some subjectivity to that, because right at the very end of it, the impacts of such development. That is a concern, and it is. But I really compliment the applicant for bringing, mitigation forward, how you would handle that traffic, because we know there's going to be crossings about any type of roadway we have. Mr. Smethels?
If I may, one of the reasons the school sites that you see in both was originally proposed in this current proposal is that it can use Waterton. We have heard and has its own intersection off of Waterton, predominantly because we have heard there could be concerns of school traffic through neighborhoods. And so Waterton being a larger boulevard section, an arterial in the community, it was our thought that that would be a better conveyance than necessarily trying to route it through a neighborhood. And so to Mr. Kiefer's point, there is an avenue intersection that crosses over at Waterton at that point. It will eventually be a signalized intersection. It's actually also a trail corridor for Burns Park in the future as a signalized intersection. That was thought of at least as a potential way to alleviate some of those traffic concerns that schools have, as well as add traffic calming at that intersection to make it safer for people to cross.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas, you hit on some of the same points I was looking at on 152001 and 03. And I'm going to go ahead and start making some comments here, because I really believe the applicant has made a lot of effort to bring this forward. And I'm going to say it strong. I believe the schools are creating some undue situations here for us and for the applicant that I don't appreciate. And I would like the schools to be better partners with this and as we go forward to development, because again, I want to compliment the applicant and all the applicants would see with what we see with the, and I believe it's necessary for the capital improvements for the schools, but with the voluntary agreement of the per dwelling unit fee, that is being very commendable. And I would like to see the schools more involved here, more of a commitment. But as I brought up before, when we have years and years of unused school sites that are definitely challenging in a lot of respects, that brings my concern. So yeah, I apologize. It's on you, the applicant, but I believe the school district needs to have a better forethought, because you brought this forward, your PD, and the school district had that option at that time. And for whatever reason they didn't, but now they come and decide that a school site is not applicable. we're better planners than that. So I think I do have a challenge in 152001 and 03 also. And I agree because this has created a situation for outright honest commitments that I believe, because I was here in 2013, I approved that PD. I know you made commitments to Plum Valley Heights, and you're sincere. But you're put in a predicament here, not by your own choice necessarily, but by the school district to fudge that commitment. And there were many reasons why you made that commitment, some we haven't mentioned here. And you've done things for Plum Valley Heights. Thank you for, again, mentioning about the water line. It was very generous of you. But that commitment doesn't necessarily have to be fudged to satisfy the schools here. I think the schools have to figure it out better with the applicant. So I do not believe that 1520-01 or 03 are being met with this application. But again, I'm not going to fault the applicant per se, but I believe the school district needs to be a better partner with working through this. Mr. Thomas?
I actually agree with all of your comments. Something that I did not bring up from my notes is that Mr. Avery, the Planning Commission turned this down. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct.
So we're not alone in our feelings about this. So I certainly want to give the benefit of the work that has been done here to the applicant. And Commissioner Partridge, you have more expertise in this realm than I do. Because I agree with you that 01 and 03 have not been met. Therefore, we cannot approve this. So is the best option to deny this? Or is there another option that allows the applicant to continue working to get a resolution here?
Mr. Thomas, first of all, I've seen you grow in years. We've worked together, and you are phenomenal at land use. I really appreciate you, but thank you for your kind comments too. And I think you bring forward a good question, and Mr. Smethels is asked to speak again. So Mr. Smethels.
I was just going to say, I think as opposed to a denial, we would request a continuance and at least be given the opportunity to work more with the school district on this application. Unfortunately, going elsewhere in preliminary plan 6 is not really our strong suit. We master planned that almost 4 years ago with the idea that this school site in preliminary plan 5 would have been acceptable. We had every reason to believe it would be. And we would request the opportunity to work with the school district to maybe see if there's a different site. I was also here in 2013, as you know, and recall all the commitments that were made, particularly to Mr. McCormick during those times. And again, I do feel like this use is not incompatible, but understand the board's concern and would be more than willing to suggest we have one more continuance. I believe Mr. Ingalls could verify that, but on this application before we request a vote.
Okay, and I would just say it's certainly if it is granted as a continuance, the conversation with this school is whether it's going to be cash in lieu. Not that I want to put that out, but it's a strong consideration with the understanding of what we have seen schools do with school sites, and Commissioner Thomas put it very well. With the sites that we've seen, they have opportunity and have not moved forward. And let you know, we, the county, have worked very hard. Our attorney has worked very hard with the school attorney, and we still have not seen those go forward. I think we're making progress. But we've had this discussion amongst the county about these school sites because it does create a problem for the development community, and it shouldn't be that way. And so again, I apologize that you're put in that position, but I think, Mr. Smethel, as you bring forward a request to say if it's continuance of being able to work with the school district, I would be in favor of going forward with that type of continuance. And Mr. Thomas, I don't know if you would be in favor of that, but if we go forward with that, I would say it's probably going to take a little bit of time. Now, I apologize. I know my term would definitely end in that early January, and it does bring in, there's a new commissioner will come in. Commissioner Thomas will be here. It does create some challenges, but for a continuance, I see the importance of bringing it on soon. I would suggest that December 8th not be a date for continuance. I know our docket is very full on that day already. But Commissioner Thomas will probably have some comments, but Mr. Smethel, do you have any further comments or statements right now? Okay. Commissioner Thomas.
What about December 15th? Is that too soon, Mr. Smethels?
It may be. Unfortunately, we had, prior to submitting this application, worked with the school district on both Preliminary Plan 5 and Preliminary Plan 6 for over 2 years. Unfortunately, as Mr. Partridge, or Commissioner Partridge, excuse me, referenced, this is a larger issue, I think, or concern moving forward. I don't know that a month would be sufficient to address it at this time.
Another option.
It seems like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Another option is, because once you submit an application, and if it would get turned down, you cannot bring that back. And Attorney Ingalls may be able to give some guideline on it, but I believe there may be a situation where you couldn't bring that back or couldn't bring it back in a certain time. There's the option withdraw the application, but I mean that comes with ramifications also. Because I see your willingness to want to make this work, but you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I don't know if we need to. We could continue this hearing to another date for further consideration for more advisement on what to do.
I think at this time I would request a continuance, and the only reason I say that is, again, we're currently serving multiple masters in determining an appropriate school site, as well as showing adequate services for the future residents of Sterling Ranch, and master planning these school sites. And as you heard in my presentation, we had master planned the Preliminary Plan 5 school site about 4 years ago. And so we've been trying to work with the district to identify another site. I would like the opportunity to continue that work with the district. If we're unsuccessful, we'll withdraw the application between now and the continuance date.
Very well. And to Commissioner Thomas's point, would the December 15th date work, not work?
That would be our last continuance. So I believe we've already continued this hearing once before. I'd prefer longer, but we can target that date if Commissioner Partridge, you would like to be here to hear this application to fruition.
Yeah, it's not necessarily my desires. I want to make sure it fits for you, but with my understanding of it. But that doesn't mean a new commissioner coming in could not get up to speed on it. You're right. This has been continued once. So can I ask Mr. Ingalls, continuing, if we would continue tonight to the December 15th, would that be the last possible time to continue it, or are there options there?
I think the board has whatever options it wants with respect to a continuance and with respect to the timing of that. I think it's fair to ask, though, what is the purpose of the continuance? This application is to amend Character Zone A to allow a school. If the board is of the opinion that that particular change cannot be made, I'm not sure what a continuance can accomplish. Now, I'm not as familiar with the PD certainly as Mr. Smethels, and maybe there are other character zone A's in other locations which could still make this make sense. But I won't be surprised if there's a big enough change that it has to go out on re-referral anyway, depending on the nature of the change, if it's something that substantial. So I think it's worth asking the question at this point, what are we trying to accomplish with the continuance given the nature of this application?
I think the thing we'd look at to see would be is if there's an area within special character zone A or adjacent to it that would be sufficient to accommodate both the 2.5 acre site and the school site. Again, the existing zoning allows for residential behind those 2.5 acre buffer lots in D1 of the PD, which allows quite a bit of density in zoning that I would consider this to be a lower use than that. So that would be one of the things that we would be considering, Mr. Ingalls, in the duration of the continuance, as well as at least having a conversation with the school district about potentially reevaluating the preliminary plan 5 site.
Okay, so with that, board, you have the discretion to continue to a date and time you feel is appropriate.
I'll also throw out there's that option to continued, as we, the board, have limits what we would be able to do individually, and as a board, the applicant still has the option to reach out to all stakeholders involved. So there's many options for you, but Commissioner Thomas?
I certainly would be pleased if the applicant could go back to the school district with the offers to make that first site acceptable, and that solves a whole lot of problems at once. But with that, I would be willing to do a continuance. And Mr. Ingalls, I understand your legal concerns about continuing it, looking for another special zone district. So I understand what you're cautioning us about. So we are looking at either December 15th or January 12th.
We can shoot for the 15th at this point, and then if we need more time, we'll make sure to ask for it.
Okay. Then I will make a motion to continue the Sterling Ranch Plan Development Second Amendment. This is project file ZR 2020-008 until Tuesday, December 15th at 2:30 in the afternoon.
I will second that. And Commissioner Thomas, thank you for just suggesting the 15th. I think new Commissioner-elect Teal would be very thankful because January 12th, he most likely will be sworn in roughly somewhere around midday and then have hearings at 1:30 and 2:30. So I think it was a good choice. So any further discussion on the continuous motion?
I have none.
Hearing none. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. This item is continued to December 15th at 2:30 p.m.
Thank you.
December 15th, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. Thank you very much. That concludes our items for today's hearing. We are adjourned.